Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Roberts. I'm the resident dramaturg at the Indiana Repertory Theater. Welcome to our pre show chat for Fahrenheit 51 with our very special guest, Tobias Anderson, who is the playwright, the adapter of the script that we are using. Of course, the play is based on Ray Bradbury's famous science fiction novel. And Mr. Anderson actually knew Mr. Bradbury. How are you today, Tobias?
I am well, and at my age, above ground and taking nourishment, I shall settle for that.
Those are all good things. Tell us, how did you meet Mr. Bradbury?
Just the old classic way, there was an open call audition for a company called the Colony Theater Company. I hadn't joined that company yet, but I hadn't been in LA that long, actually. And it was an open call. I auditioned for it, and they saw something in me that felt that I could do the fire chief, Captain Beatty.
So, this
Uh,
was the first production of Bradbury's adaptation, right?
Yes, and boy, do I want to make that absolutely 110% clear.
Oh,
The
that sounds like a
very,
story.
yeah, well, no, it's just that I see there's other stuff been done, and possibly they think that this was the original. No, they are wrong. I'm glad for any production of Fahrenheit 451, even a musical. I heard there was one. There's even been an opera, which I think is probably a pretty good idea, actually.
Interesting.
But no, I forgot what I was going to say. What were we talking about?
You were talking about Bradbury's first adaptation of his
Oh
own book.
yeah, so that's all. That's what it was at the Colony Theater. One point I want to make about this and the original cast: this was an equity waiver production. In the old days, there were too many equity actors for theaters, so the union put together a thing called equity waiver, which meant you could work at a small theater for gas money.
Hmm.
But the point is, four of the actors in the original performance were equity actors. This was a union production of
Hmm.
Fahrenheit 451, and that's the first one that was ever on the boards in any way.
And that was 1979, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Somewhere in that vicinity?
yeah,
That's what I read on Wikipedia. So,
exactly 1970. I think I'm just going to say right here to your audience out there, I'm coming up on 85 next month. I forgot where I was for a moment there, and I will intend to do that again. The weird thing is, I can still remember lines, whole passages of Shakespeare, but I can't remember where my coffee cup is. Some people that are watching this may identify with that. So if I go away again, so what?
I think a lot of our audience will identify with
I,
you. I
I,
identify with you. Trust me.
okay. Well, what can you say? It was a marvelous experience. Ray is just sitting right there, writing this thing for us as we go along. If something didn't like, we would go back and change it. I want to, at this point, credit Terence Schenck, the founder of the Colony Theater, the director of most of their major shows. He began, most people don't know, with the Martian Chronicles. And they didn't have a lot of special effects in those days, and he relied on Ray's text. And it really worked. It sold out, it was a big hit. And so Fahrenheit 451 became next. After that, they did a musical adaptation of Dandelion Wine. There may have been some other Bradbury stuff that hit the board, but I don't know it. But that much I can tell you took place in LA back in the 70s and 80s.
So you did this show in which you were an actor in a major role. Fire Chief Beatty is a huge role in Fahrenheit
It's
451.
one of the most challenging roles I've ever had.
Well, those two monologues are just phenomenal. When you folks see the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. Fire Chief Beatty has two very long, intense, exciting, wonderful monologues.
Wonderful monologues.
So you did
Blacks
this.
don't like little bad like Samuel, burn it. Whites can't stand Uncle Tom's Cabin, burn it. The Jews hate Oliver Twist, burn Fagin. The Irish think Sean O'Casey's out to get him, burn O'Casey. There you are.
So you went right for the hardcore stuff in the middle of that. Yeah. Fire
Well,
Chief Beatty is not necessarily the most likable character in the play. So you did this show with him. How did you then go on to become colleagues and friends with
well,
Mr. Bradbury?
a couple of reasons. First of all, I want to say something to him about Beatty himself, though. At the thing at the end of one of his books, whatever that's called, it's not a foreword, an afterword, I guess. He says, I called all my this was 20 years after he'd written Fahrenheit. And he said, he called all his people together and said, what can you tell me you've learned? And Beatty came, I'm quoting here, furthest out of the shadows. And what you get in the movie and the book, beautiful, both of them, but Beatty is pretty much a mouthpiece. In the play, you will see, if you know both works, that Beatty takes on an entirely different role, and that he sees in Montague the son that he never had. And it becomes even more clear that Beatty is a sold-out intellectual, one smart cookie who just walked into the system. And one scene appears in the play, which appears nowhere else, and he takes him to his home. And we had this kind of clicker, and I clicked this thing, and huge bookshelves came down with books everywhere. And Montague is going absolutely crazy. He's going, ah! And he says, you. He says, me. He says, it's against the law. He says, not if you don't read them. If you don't read them, it's not against the law. He was tapping into everybody who has those huge, gorgeous libraries and never crack a book. I'm sure he was. I knew he wanted to get that off of his chest. But the point is, it's a different work in many ways, and makes Beatty quite a human being.
It's very
a sad one, but a human being.
It's very interesting, the changes he made himself.
Yeah.
And I love that comment you made. You had told me that earlier about how the characters in the story talked to him, and Beatty was the one who had the most things to say.
Yeah.
So he wrote him a new scene. So what was the first thing the two of you did together?
This is it.
Besides the play, I mean, when you started writing things together.
No, we haven't never written things together. I need to make that very, very, very.
Oh, I thought you had done a.
We do the illustrated with him. We did here, and I want to make this clear too.
Good.
This is the illustrated man. The first. I don't know if you can even see it.
Yeah.
This is the one that Ray and I started working on. We changed it to the Illustrated Bradbury because, first of all, we think it was a better title. And second of all, because Warner Brothers already had an option. So the main thing I'll start with, I wish I'd thought of it sooner, because Ray and I corresponded back and forth. I did 2 more productions of Fahrenheit and also a sort of a staged reading. But when I'm in my 70s, I say, I call up Ray or I email him and said, Ray, why aren't we doing a one-man show? And he said, I don't know. And a week later, I get the Foghorn totally rewritten in first person so I can play it. And so we rewrote. So he took 5 of his major characters and rewrote them. And I took 4 more and didn't change a word, but adapted them. So that's my contribution to writing. So that's why it says The Illustrated Bradbury by Ray Bradbury with Tobias Anderson.
I see.
Ray was extraordinarily careful with letting his work out and anybody else put their name on it. I was flattered that he did that way, but I'm not a writer, and I've never written anything in that respect.
So did you perform that play then, The Illustrated Bradbury?
Yes. The first one, Fahrenheit 451, I did that 2 or 3 more times. The Illustrated Bradbury, because I was in my 70s, I've done it 5 locations, 2 in California and 3 up here. But I have put it away. It is it's almost as tough as King Lear, maybe a little tougher in some ways. It's a real challenge. And I'm looking for a 38, 40-year-old actor who wants to take this thing on and make money. I've toured with Clarence Darrow for 20 years and made a lot of money. That's a great one-man show. This one, I'm sending it to all of your cast, by the way.
Okay.
A script and a couple others to you and all of that, and I hope you keep it. Maybe somebody will get the idea, because there is money to be made on this script right here.
So tell us about the man himself. What was he like?
One of the most loving men I have ever known in my life. He used to sign almost everything saying, much love, Ray. I started doing that just because I knew Ray. You know, I heard that he was kind of hurt or something when they did the thing that he did in Ireland. And I can understand that. He was a very, very sensitive fellow.
Oh, when he wrote the movie, maybe Moby Dick with John.
That's the one. And I heard I read places that he was given a rough time, and that's unfortunate because Ray Bradbury never deserved a rough time in his life. He was a consummate professional, most passionate man. He once said, "Did you know that he published a book of short stories before he died in age 92?" He once said about writing, he said, "Jump off the cliff and write all the way down," and that's what he did. His daughter told me that every time he would come out of the hospital, he had more energy than he went in before. You know, he was just that kind of guy. And here's the thing that I don't know if anybody has ever noticed about him, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to put it out there. I can tell you his address, 10265 Cheviot Drive. That's about a couple of football throws from 20th Century Fox. Mm-hmm. He lived there. It's a house that looks like it's right out of Illinois. Right out of Illinois. It's a yellow and white house with a porch and everything. And he lived there while everything else grew up all around him, but he didn't care. That's where he lived with his wife and his daughters. I thought that was so middle America of him, which he was, that I was kind of moved by it all. And I'm very glad to know, and I hope your audience is going to see it, that the Center for Ray Bradbury Studies has recreated his writing room. I've been in it.
I haven't been over there yet.
Oh, it's fabulous. And by
I think
the way,
I'm going there with you, actually. That's an IUPUI for folks who are listening.
Well, one thing we should look at is the original program of Fahrenheit 451 at the Colony Theater with everybody that's in it. And whoever is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, doing a musical, I wish them luck. I hope it works. But this is Fahrenheit 451, the original. And I don't think I'd be any more jealous about keeping that way than Ray would, because that was the one thing. It was his work, and by God, he held on to it tightly.
So I know he was always interested in theater, and then eventually he wrote a lot of plays, actually, toward the end of his life.
Wonderful Ice Cream Suit. Have you read that one?
I don't know that one.
It's about 6 guys who don't really have any money, but they put it together. And they buy this absolutely fabulous suit they see in the window, and each takes a day trying to wearing it. As you can tell, it may not turn out too well. It's a fascinating. That's one of my favorite of his. But you know, I mean, where do you start with everything? I'll tell you this about it. One of them is in Martian Chronicles, and in the play, the Illustrated Bradbury, there's an epilogue that I did. And it's about, I can't tell, it's called The Fire Balloons. And it's about these 2 priests who are waiting for the beings of this planet, I think it's Mars, to come and be there for a service or something. And it's so gorgeously written. And the one priest finally sits down and he starts playing an organ, and the music floats up. And then these beings come. They're kind of like big balloons or something. And then you hear this voice that says, I can't begin to quote it, but it essentially says, "We really appreciate what you've done here. But the truth of it is, we are settled beings. We're pretty happy where we are. Please go and do your next thing somewhere else." He was just amazing. That imagination, he just went anywhere.
And it's so interesting, you know, we think of science fiction often in sort of harsh terms, and certainly, I mean, Fahrenheit 451 takes place in a very dystopian environment, but his works are all very human and very positive in their ultimate message.
He was a great listener, I think is the thing to say, and that showed up in his work. I mean, his people were, Beatty's not hard to latch on to, other than the fact that it requires strength and breath support to take him off, but I understood where he was going with that character. You understand anything, you know, all of that. No, he was one of the best. Do you know how he did Fahrenheit 451, by the way?
No, tell me.
It's because he was stopped walking at night in bed. That's the story a lot of people know, and apocryphal, and because of the presence of the police and the whole thing, and this totalitarian society.
I did read about that, how he was walking down the street late one night and got stopped just for being out on the street.
Yeah. By the way, the productions I did up here of Fahrenheit I do want to mention.
You mean up in Portland, where you are?
In Portland, where I'm here. The last one was done at Mount Hood Community College. There were 9 performances of it, 5 for the general audience, and 4 for 500 and some kids bust in every damn morning to talk about totalitarianism, censorship, and anything that may or may not have ever occurred to their young minds. I hope that's why this play has to keep going.
We have quite a few student matinees for our production as well.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, student matinees are a big important part of our mission.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am to see a major theater like Indiana Rep. I mean, I've heard about you guys forever, and that you're doing this. Really.
Well,
I mean,
and you know,
reputation precedes you.
It's a classic story of how Janet Allen, our artistic director, found your adaptation in a basket under her desk that had been behind by her predecessor, Libby Apple, 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
This is so weird.
And she pulled it out and went, oh, Fahrenheit 451, wouldn't that be a great thing to do? And she read the play and she loved it. And then she had no idea how to contact you because there was no name your name was there, but no address or anything. So she had to go through, the theater network to find you. And we were thrilled that we did find you. I want to ask you, so Mr. Bradbury's adaptation is huge with 40 characters and 20 actors. How did it come about that you created this 5-person adaptation of his adaptation?
Well, I forgot to go to this part of it, and I will, because there's a couple of interesting things that happened. I've been up here moving in Portland. I came up here to Portland to do C.S. Lewis in Shadowlands, and I decided to stay here. And eventually the artistic director knew who I was, and that Fahrenheit was in my background. So we decided we'd do it. He had opened a new kind of a small theater in addition to the one that they were using, and this is where he wanted to do it. Well, there's no way you were going to get 18 people on that stage. It just wasn't. I wrote the adaptation, and then I sent it to him. And he said, okay, fine. And we went ahead and did it. And then later, we did that stage reading, and then we did the same approach, this adaptation, though I expanded the characters, to this production at the college. And I sent it to him, a video, this one, because we had a score written for it and everything. And he got upset with me. And I went, he said, my God, what, you've done this to my work. And I'll explain what I did in a minute. And then I said, Ray, this same adaptation I sent to you last time, it's years ago. He said, well, I didn't read that. I said, well, Ray, what do you want me to do here? And finally he came around, and I think he read it and re-looked at it, and he rewrote me. And I'm glad he did, because you're using this because of what he wrote. He said he trusted me to do anything with the work, period. And you guys have that. Your artistic director has that. And that's why the publishing company agreed to let this version go. I have since written his agents, because it has occurred to me that the reality of the American theater is we want one set and 2 actors if we can get away with it. That's what we're all trying for. Well, this ain't it. But if we have a Fahrenheit that we can get away with 5 actors, which is more important in this particular case? The message of what Bradbury had to say, or whether we field 15 or 18 actors? I think the message is the thing that's most important. And I wrote that to them, and I haven't heard back yet, but I hope they agree with me, because I think we should publish the version that you have.
Well, it's a beautiful adaptation, and it's very, very faithful to Mr. Bradbury's adaptation.
Every word in that is his. Every word.
Just fewer people saying the words.
That's right. When you really get down to it, there's essentially 4 or 5 characters in it anyway.
And it's very, very exciting. I haven't seen any of the rehearsals yet, but I've heard the actors read the play, and I've seen the designs, and I think it's going to be a really exciting production. There's lots of technical stuff going on around wonderful acting.
I hope so, because
together to make a really strong production.
Well, I hope so, and I'm counting on that, because I intend to take my time there and send out what you have done. I mean, talk about what you've done to other theaters. Other theaters should be doing this now, and a version of Fahrenheit.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those of you who enjoy your time here with Mr. Tobias on video, He is going to be here in Indianapolis for our opening. He'll be here on the 27th and the 28th, and then on the 29th, he's going to be doing a post-show discussion after our 5 o'clock performance that day. So if you want to meet him in person, now is your opportunity. I noticed behind you a picture of you and Harvey. I'm guessing that's another play that you've done.
Well, I've been a very lucky actor. I came to Portland, Oregon, of all places, as I said, to do C.S. Lewis in Shadowlands, the story of his life with Joey Grisham. And I hit the right place at the right time. There weren't that many older actors, and I have not stopped working until I got cancer a couple of years ago. And now that I'm through with that, I may go back in. Who knows?
Good for you. Good for you. And I bet you have another yoga class today, don't you?
No, but I have already done my mile walk with my friend,
Okay.
my two friends and their dogs, and that's how I keep going. And they're going to have to cart me off the stage. That's all.
We'll never cart you off. You'll just keep going and
so.
going and going.
I'm so looking forward to seeing you and being in Indianapolis and wanting your wonderful theater. Please give my regards to Janet.
I will do that.
Looking forward to meeting her. Are we done here?
We're done here. It's so great to talk to you again. And I hope the audiences have enjoyed this as much as I do. You're a fun guy.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you all very much. And come and see Fahrenheit 451, January 26th through February 20th at the Indiana Repertory Theater, adapted by Mr. Tobias Anderson from Ray Bradbury's brilliant novel. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.